I am a single mother to a 6-year-old girl. I've raised my daughter all on my own. She was born from a one-night stand with a former friend. We never got together, and he refused to be involved in my pregnancy or my daughter's first 4 years of life. I was stressed out emotionally because it's a big change, but I never asked for child support or forced him to be involved. I have enough income to send my daughter to private school. I'm perfectly fine on my own. The issue started when he reappeared and decided he wanted visitation. He's not on my daughter's birth certificate. Father is listed as unknown. He wanted to have that amended. I said no, and that if he wants, the best he'll get is to meet her in outings with myself or my daughter's godparents. He agreed, but he's been constantly pressuring for parental rights. Court already gave him a big fat no unless he pays 4 years of child support, which with his income goes somewhere around $230 USD. He hasn't paid a cent. My daughter doesn't even call him dad or recognize him as dad. She calls him Mr. I keep it very clean. I never bad-talked him, never made up stories. When she asked about her father, I used to say it was just the two of us. Even during court, the assigned CPS agent testified that my daughter had no affection or clear relationship with her biological father. Now, the main issue happened at a PTA meeting. He would say things like, "My family thinks," or "What is best for my family?" I didn't agree with him, and I voiced by saying, "My daughter has different needs, and those are priority." He was clearly angry. After the meeting, there was a moment for teachers and parents to mingle and just talk about how the kids are doing. One of the teachers approached me to apologize, saying she didn't know my husband and I didn't like a project she was doing with the kids. I told her I had no husband, and my daughter loved the project and wants to be part of it. The teacher then told me that my former friend was going around talking like he's my husband and he represents the family. I saw red. I walked to him and very loudly told him we needed to talk in private. In the parking lot, I told him we were not a family and that he either will respect I am the only one that can make decisions on my daughter's education, or he won't be involved. He went on about being her biological father. Then I reminded him he had not paid a cent for the pregnancy, my daughter's needs, or even the private school my daughter is in. He hasn't tried to see my daughter since, which she doesn't mind at all. I asked her, I do feel a bit bad about what I said. Am I the jerk? I wanted to add this because the PMs are driving me insane. He has the money to pay child support. He chose not to pay. He was never prohibited from being involved. He had my phone number. I sent him pictures and invited him to birthdays and other big celebrations. He never came. We are not in the US. Now for the next part. I'm going to preface this by saying my 6-year-old daughter's father, I'm going to call him Jeff, has never been my romantic partner. We had a one-night stand. I don't like people calling him my ex, since it makes it seem we had some kind of emotional attachment. He was never involved after I told him I was pregnant and actually wanted me to terminate the pregnancy, but I decided to raise my child alone since I have enough money to raise her without child support. For the whole pregnancy and the first 4 years, Jeff was not in the picture. On my mother's recommendation, I did send him pictures and invited him to special events, but he always replied he had no interest in my daughter. 2 years ago, he reappeared and began demanding parental rights. When I didn't do what he wanted, he sued and was told no, he was not getting parental rights. He was given the offer to pay child support, and then we can revisit giving him actual rights. But he has refused. He has the money, much more than me, but he refuses. I still offered to let him see my daughter in a casual manner. No child support needed. With the agreement, anything legal, medical, or educational will not involve him. He pushed the boundaries and we had a fallout. After that, we didn't hear from him for almost 6 weeks before he called to meet for Christmas. After much discussion, I agreed to bring my daughter over on the condition my daughter's godparents could come. Thus, we went over for Christmas dinner and found out Jeff is married and had never told his family he had a child. It was great to be judged by a bunch of strangers. It was uncomfortable the whole time. I'm going to use fake names, but let's say my daughter's name is Katie. His wife kept calling my daughter Gabrielle, not the actual name she used, but it was that different from my daughter's name. The wife was also very physical, trying to pick up my daughter or parent her. I would block her or tell her to please let me deal with my child. The whole time she pretty much ignored me, but Katie didn't seem nervous, so I decided to just bide my time. I hit my limit when my daughter said she needed the bathroom, and this stranger went, "Oh, Gabby, you need potty? Let mommy change you." My daughter hasn't worn diapers in a while now, and she's more than capable of going alone to the bathroom. I immediately told her to stay away from my daughter and that we were leaving. The woman started wailing that I was kidnapping her baby girl and tried to lunge at me. Her in-laws got in the middle and held her, consoling her and saying that we weren't leaving and for her to calm down like she was the victim. At that point, I just glared at Jeff and told him he better explain or I would be calling the police. He asked me to speak in private in another room and that I could just leave my daughter with his parents. No way that would ever happen. Katie's godparents took her with them, despite the wife having a full meltdown. Jeff and I spoke outside, and he explained that he and his wife recently lost a daughter. I'm not going to give specific details on that. All I'll say, it was sudden and nobody's fault. And as I can only imagine, it had caused some psychological issues for his wife. Apparently, he had the brilliant idea that having Katie pass as their lost child would help his wife, without telling me. And that's why he wanted visitations and parental rights. He pleaded for me to leave my daughter with him for a little bit. I asked him what was his plan when his wife heals. His response was disgusting. "Well, I'll just send Katie back with you, and it will be just like before." I told him he was insane if he thought I would let him use my daughter like that. What his wife needs is therapy with a professional, not feeding her delusions. And I would not let that woman within miles from my daughter. He told me I was being cruel and didn't know the pain of losing a child. I agreed with him, but reminded Jeff that my priority is not his family, it's my child. What he and his family do to work through their grief has nothing to do with us. I also told him to call his lawyer because I am making sure he never has contact with my child. So that's what I'm bracing for. He's been blasting my phone since Christmas, but I can easily ignore him. My daughter and I are doing a small travel vacation. Here's the script based on the text you provided. This isn't an update, just something I feel needs to be said. My daughter is set for life monetarily. She has a trust, and I make really good money in my position. If she was 18 right now, I could put her through college without a loan. She doesn't need child support for quality of life. If I could get child support and never worry about her father trying something, I would be suing him in a heartbeat. But after talking to a lawyer and realizing the risk, I've taken the decision that child support or possible inheritance is not worth my child's safety. Safety is always first. Hey everyone, Happy New Year. This isn't so much a real update as just letting people know we are home and safe. My daughter is spending the rest of her vacation with her godparents on another trip while I work on things. Moving might be something I'll be looking into, though that is a long-term plan considering all it takes. I won't share too many details on what my lawyer is going to be doing, but we are absolutely going to push for a restraining order. I might not post for some time, at least not until things settle. I do appreciate all the support and good advice. I'm taking a lot of it into account as I plan how to move forward. Now for a later update. Hey everyone, I decided to post a last update since I will be going full silent for a long period. For those that didn't know, I'm right now dealing with my daughter's father and his delusion. He wants to use my daughter as a therapy doll for his wife that recently lost a child. A lot of people were worried for my daughter and me, and I truly appreciate it. We're both safe. She's currently having a great vacation with her godparents, and I'm currently making my own arrangements to move on. My lawyer is working hard on keeping everything in order. I know a cease and desist was his first action, and we are going for no contact. He says we have a solid case, and hopefully this will be resolved relatively fast. And by that, I mean a year or two. We did get a temporary restraining order. It's only until our first court date, but after, it could be extended. I haven't had direct contact with Jeff. He lawyered up too and tried to send a threat to take full custody. My lawyer laughed at it since his reasoning was parental alienation. Except I have proof I tried for years to have him involved. Apparently, turning in a few emails showing my attempts was enough to get them to change parental alienation to a different reasoning. My lawyer is not worried, in all honesty. For now, I've decided after much thinking that moving is going to be necessary. It won't be something I can do on a whim, but I'll be looking into new houses within the month to hopefully move sometime this year. School will remain the same, but we will be speaking to the admin to make sure only certain people can pick her up. And part of that decision has been to hire a private driver. He's someone I absolutely trust and has worked for relatives in the past, so I'm very comfortable with the idea, and so is my daughter. Now I just have to make sure they don't go for fast food every day after school. Things, in all honesty, are not that scary right now. I have a good lawyer, good evidence, and my little girl is happy and healthy, so I'm just going to focus on working things little by little. Because of the legal proceedings, I don't think I'll be posting any updates anytime soon. And to those sending me messages telling me I'm horrible for keeping my daughter from her father, or telling me I shouldn't have had her in the first place, please kindly speak to the void. I'm too busy. Now for another update. I had no intentions to do a new post, but today absolutely took the cake. To those that don't know, my daughter, who is 6 years old, was born from a one-night stand with Jeff. We were never romantically involved. It was a simple one-night stand, and we did use contraceptives, but they failed. It happens. A few months ago, Jeff went full psycho and tried to convince me to leave my daughter with him so she could serve as a replacement child for his wife, who recently lost their infant daughter. I refused, and right now, we're in the middle of some legal issues. Now for today, I thankfully didn't deal with Jeff. Instead, he sent a priest to harass me at work. I'm going to be very blunt. I am completely detached from religion. I'm not an atheist, just don't really like the idea of the Catholic Church. That's the leading religion in my home country. I respect it, and most of my family is Catholic, so I have a detached respect for church officials. Today, I was doing some paperwork when I got a call about a priest asking for me. I didn't have any meetings scheduled, and a lot of times we get visits from clergy asking for donations or participation in events, so I figured that was it. I told the secretary to let him in, and things at first seemed rather polite. Shake hands, asking how things were, the usual chit-chat. Then the priest began talking about how it had come to his attention that I was a single woman with a child, and that apparently I lived a life of debauchery and hate. His words. I was taken aback and agreed I was a single mother, but that I didn't see how I lived in debauchery and hate. The priest then went on about how he knew my daughter is prohibited from spending time with her father, and that I'm constantly sleeping around with men instead of living a godly life. How he was worried and thought it would be best I considered giving my daughter a chance to live with a proper family rather than see me sell myself. Angry was an understatement. I did keep it civil, simply because I was at work. And I had no intentions of screaming to a religious man at work. I simply told him that my daughter was fine with me. She lived a safe and happy life. My personal affairs were my own, and that I had no intentions of sending her to another household. I told him that if there was nothing else, he should probably leave, as I had other things to attend to. He then showed his hand, and that's how I know it was Jeff's doing. The priest told me he didn't think my daughter would be a happy child with me, but her father was well respected in his church, and he knew he would raise a proper Christian lady. At that, I laughed and simply said no. I once again recommended he left, and if he didn't, I would be calling security. He left, saying he would try to speak to me again when I'm not being hysterical. I told my secretary and our security not to let him into my office again, and I called my lawyer. I don't have audio, but we do have security feed from him walking into my office. Thank you again to everyone sending well wishes in my previous post. We are still working on that move, but school is back and she's loving it. We still have that temporary restraining order against Jeff and his wife, and school officials know it. Now for the latest update. Hey Reddit, this came up far earlier than planned, and while I'm happy to announce my daughter and I are finally free, there are some sad news mixed in. Just to recap, I, now 34, have a daughter, now 6, with Jeff, 37. We never dated. It was a one-night stand where protection failed. I never regret having my daughter, despite Jeff demanding me to end the pregnancy, then refusing to be involved for my daughter's first 4 years of life. 2 years ago, he reappeared demanding parental rights. Our country's courts deny it since he was not on her birth certificate, his decision, and he had never paid any kind of child support. Turned out he didn't care for my daughter. All he wanted was to use her as a replacement for a child he lost with his wife. Now, before I go to the update, I did get a lot of questions to answer. 1. Did I know Jeff was married? He wasn't when we had our one-night stand. Here's the script. Are you interested in Jeff? No. I'm aromantic, meaning I do not develop romantic feelings. I don't think that's a healthy mindset for a long-term partner, so I refuse to date. I was okay with one-night stands until I had my daughter. Why did you send information to Jeff? Because my mother recommended it, and she was absolutely right. Had I not done so, he could have sued me for parental alienation. By trying to get him involved, I actually came out far better situated to prove I'm not trying to keep him away out of spite, but because I truly think he's a danger. Why don't you talk more about your daughter's emotion status? No. No offense, but I give just enough information on my 6-year-old. I don't think people on Reddit are bad, but this is the internet. I don't really need to speak in-depth details on my child's mental state or her actions. What I want to share about myself, that's fine. I'm a full-grown woman. My child is another matter. I don't even post pictures of her on social media. All you need to know, for the people asking, is she's happy, healthy, and has a father figure in her godfather. She's a normal, rambunctious little girl. Why was Jeff arrested? He got into a drunk fight. Attack charges. It's completely unrelated to my kid, but could have been used for custody matters. Ended up being unnecessary. Now, to the update. While our case has yet to be reviewed, we were scheduled for September 2025. Jeff's lawyer contacted mine to say they were dropping their demand for parental rights. About 6 weeks ago, Jeff formally agreed to drop any claims for rights or responsibility to my daughter. I know a lot of people are going to go all over, but what about child support or inheritance? Keep reading. It should explain why it is not worth it. My lawyer went over the documents to make sure it wasn't a legal trap of sorts, and he confirmed they were exactly that. He wasn't asking for anything in return, just to drop. I didn't question more, just had it signed, and now we need to wait a couple of weeks to get confirmation everything is done. Since both parties agree on this, it should be relatively quick to get it through the courts. If it sounds weird that he suddenly just gave up, I thought the same. To be sincere, I was half tempted to snoop around, but I was way too busy making arrangements. As some people suggested, I will be moving. I won't leave the country I live in, but I plan to move closer to my support system, my daughter's godparents. Turns out there's a property less than 5 mins away from them on sale. There's no home built yet, so I have a lot to do, but that's my intended new home. We also got not 1, not 2, 3 dogs. The cat probably is planning my unalive. So with all of these changes, I have to admit, I didn't have time to snoop. The thing is, the whole thing came to me rather than me needing to look. I met with Jeff's in-laws. It was pure coincidence. I was waiting on some things in a store, and they were there. I had met them in passing in that mess of a Christmas party last year, but this is really the first time we talked. My daughter was thankfully at school since the topic was heavy. They recognized me and asked if I could speak to them. I wasn't sure, but I decided to be polite and offered to buy them a coffee. They were very nice, not entitled at all. They explained they were sorry for their daughter's behavior. She had not been the same since she lost her child. Those who called out that she was using her dead baby's name on my daughter were right. And they just wanted to clear the air with me. I told them I didn't personally blame them, but I couldn't forgive their daughter, and she was a big worry. That's when things hit the fan. The mother started crying, and the father explained Jeff's wife passed away. Self-inflicted. I feel like crap for the things I told them. I apologized, but they were very gracious and told me they knew I had no idea. We talked a little about her, about their grandchild. I found out what Jeff told me about how his child died was a lie. And now I don't feel so kind as to keep it wrapped up. He shook an infant because she was colic. If you don't know what that is, it's when babies just cry nonstop. I was angry. I'm still angry. No one should ever shake a baby to the point they pass away. That's just diabolical in my opinion. He had told me she just passed away from sudden infant mortality. It's a common thing here, unfortunately. They talked about Jeff and how he swore up and down I would agree with his idea to have my daughter pass for their lost grandchild, and that would help their daughter. They were not really thinking straight, and I get it. Jeff is a charmer, and mix that with grief, it goes nowhere well. There were other things said, but the main thing was they didn't want any resentment on my part to their family or their daughter. I told them that I don't hate them or their daughter, and how sorry I was they had to go through all of this. They gave me a picture of my daughter's half-sister. She was a very cute baby, and I plan to one day explain things to my daughter. I think it's important she knows. I also know where Jeff's wife and her baby are buried. I think not yet, but when things aren't as raw as they are right now, I'll take my daughter to visit her sister. I called my lawyer after to give him these new details. He did reprimand me for speaking to the in-laws alone, but he understood the situation. My lawyer is a good friend of mine, and he tends to be very blunt when I make mistakes. He promised me he's making sure that whatever ties could exist between Jeff and my daughter are fully cut legally. More things have come to light, too. People were right. Jeff was pretty much lying to everyone, trying to paint himself as this saintly father that couldn't possibly be part of his one surviving daughter's life. A lot of people immediately judge single mothers here as homewreckers or prostitutes, so I had a few bad encounters with people throwing insults and threats my way. Another thing that came up, which was relatively recent. This was about 2 weeks before he gave up. Jeff began telling people he offered to marry me, but I refused him, that I was always after his money. Thankfully, that one lie didn't go far with most people that know both of us, since I've made it very clear throughout my life that I'm never getting married. And I don't need his money. I got into a high-income job to care for my mom, and now my daughter. I don't really care for excessive luxury. His wife passed away not long before he sent the agreement. He didn't want anything to do with my daughter. It does explain why Jeff gave up. I still think he's the most horrible human being that exists, an entitled murderous bastard. He felt entitled to my daughter, he failed his wife, and ended the life of an innocent baby. And I know he knows I'm posting this on Reddit, so if you read this, Jeff, I hope if karma is real, it gives you everything you deserve. I want to say more, but I don't want to break Reddit's rules. But yeah, here's the good news, mixed with terrible news. I might update this post if anything else happens, but I want to believe this is over. I just want to close this chapter and look into a new start. Now for a few important comments. When asked why Jeff is not in jail, I can't tell you for sure. You have to understand I'm going from what the in-laws told me and what I know of Jeff. I'm not a detective. My guess? He either paid his way out or made it seem it was an accident. As far as anyone I've met that knows about his kid, they thought the same as me. She died suddenly in her sleep. I don't doubt the in-laws, though. It sounds like something Jeff would do at this point. On her country's laws, we're not in the US, first of all. American law isn't a thing here. Here, a good bribe to the right person makes a lot of things go away. All I'll say is Latin America. I've explained in my past posts I don't share my specific country for privacy reasons. Now for the update. Well, it's been 3 months and good news all around. To begin with, we're finally free of Jeff. Life is pretty much back to normal. My daughter only asked about Jeff once when we went to the park we would meet him at, and it was to make sure Mr. was not there. We also went together to her baby sister's grave. I explained to her as best as I could. I don't think she understands yet what the situation with her half-sister is, but we will go through it little by little. Another big change is I'm dating someone. And no, I'm still aromantic. My best friend, who's been in the US until recently, came back and asked me out. When I told him I was aromantic, he told me there was no pressure for romantic feelings. He just wanted a partner he could trust, and while this isn't a traditional relationship, it's really nice. I adore him as a friend, even if I don't see him in any romantic way. He's met my daughter, but we're not doing anything official like moving in for a very long time. Through the grapevine, I heard Jeff is apparently engaged again, too. I think it was a very good thing we made that no-contact agreement. If he ever tries anything with my daughter, that piece of paper will be enough for court to tell him to go away. Overall, we're happy and safe. I'm grateful for all the support here through the hell that was dealing with Jeff. Am I the idiot for calling my niece my baby and sparking a family feud over a term of endearment? I recently visited home for my niece's 7th birthday party. I live about an hour away from my hometown for college, and I'm currently pursuing my master's before I go on to law school. This is all to say that I see my family maybe once or twice a year due to classes and me working 2 jobs. My niece's birthday was 2 weekends ago, and she and I are quite close. I spent a lot of time babysitting her when I was younger, and still at home because my brother and sister-in-law both worked jobs. My classes were all online due to infection 19, so it was natural for me to become the instinctive babysitter. I was happy to do so because I love my niece and wanted to lighten the load of my brother and sister-in-law's emotional and physical loads. My family, sister-in-law and brother included, knew I would be attending my niece's birthday party as a surprise. When she saw me, she ran up to me and shrieked happily. I wrapped her up in a big hug and said, "Hi, my baby," before giving her a smooch. I sent her off afterward to mingle with her guests like a proper host. I then sat with my own family and caught up with them. Later, my sister-in-law seemed distant and annoyed with me. Before presents, she pulled me aside and asked me not to call my niece my baby again because she found it offensive. I profusely apologized as soon as she said so and promised I wouldn't do so again. I spent the rest of the party calling her sweetie or just by her name. I'm an extremely affectionate person. I call my niece and nephew an array of terms of endearment, both including my baby. I've called both of them this occasionally before around family, and no one has said anything. To be honest, sweetie or sweetheart is more common for me, but this isn't the first time. I never say stuff like, "You're my baby," "This is my baby," etc. I usually word it like, "Of course my baby," "Hi my baby," "Yes my baby," etc. My sister-in-law is still mad at me and later called me a horrible aunt and person for calling my niece my baby. I tried explaining it was just a term of endearment and saying I meant no harm, but she seemingly does not care and keeps calling me horrible. It's breaking my heart because I've tried apologizing and making it up, but my sister-in-law swears I'm out to get her. I don't know why she thinks this. I've done nothing but look after her and my niece. I just wish she would listen to me instead of icing me out. Am I the jerk for calling my niece my baby as a term of endearment? Now, for a few comments. One commenter said, "Okay, you used a term of endearment for your niece. Her mother didn't like it, asked you to stop, and you apologized and stopped. Now she's icing you out, which you can't do anything about further because, again, you've apologized and corrected your actions. Not the jerk for this isolated incident, but do you have a pattern of being overly fond, surpassing or ignoring boundaries and recycling disliked behavior? If not, I really don't see the problem here." I responded, "Thank you so much for your thoughts. I do not have a pattern of ignoring boundaries whatsoever. I'm kind of the most communicative one of the family. I 100% understood my sister-in-law was setting a boundary when she pulled me aside and knew to respect it. Because at the end of the day, she's the parent, not me. This has never happened with us before, to be honest, which is making it so much more disorienting, you know? Also, me and my younger sibling are much closer in age than me and my older brother, so this definitely has not stemmed out of our sibling dynamic at least. She's not as close with her siblings and has distant parents, so maybe the general involvement of my family overall has affected her. This is just speculation on my behalf though, because she hasn't said any of that to me. Another commenter asked, "You say your niece is 7 and you are 23. So how long has it been since you have gone off to college, and how much time did you spend together?" I'm not saying you have done anything wrong because you haven't. When called out, you apologized and corrected. What I am suggesting is that if you babysat regularly for long periods of time, there is a chance that your niece has been missing you more. Now you have gone, then she has missed your sister-in-law, her mother, and there could be a chance that you saying "my baby" triggered some jealousy and resentment from your sister-in-law. Like how sometimes kids are closer to their nannies than their workaholic parents who don't even know their favorite food. I chose an extreme example to make the explanation easier if it helps. I replied, "So I've been away for coming up on 3 years now. When my niece was an infant, my sister-in-law and brother actually lived with us for a little over a year, and I babysat her almost daily while they worked. When they moved out, I saw her about once or twice every weekend because my brother and sister-in-law would visit then. I still talk to my family/niece about once a week, and I do have time where I talk to just my niece on FaceTime because she takes my brother's sister-in-law's phone to chat with me. I'm definitely thinking I struck a nerve that I didn't know was there, and I'm really just hoping that with time she'll be willing to talk to me about whatever is going on." Another commenter said, "Not the jerk. You were saying this because she's a child that you love. I had friends and family say this about my kids, and I love it. But I can get if your sister-in-law didn't dig it. Not everyone feels the same as me. She voiced her concern and you respected it. You apologized. It seems to me that she's maybe jealous of the special relationship that the two of you have. My kids adore their aunties and sometimes treat them nicer than they do me. I get it, because I was the same way as a kid, and I see it as how we are lucky to have a village. Some mamas aren't like that. I would just shrug it off and not bring it up if you can and keep on loving your sweet niece and using other terms of affection for her." I responded, "Thank you. I've been kind of freaking out about my relationship with my niece because it's already been hard for her over the past 3 years, with me being inaccessible due to distance while I'm at school. I'm hoping that my sister-in-law will either ignore it or be open to have an open discussion with me closer to the holidays when I'm planning on visiting again, so there's no bad blood or whatever. She's not super close with her family, and she and I are the only girls of both of our families, which bonded us in the first place. So I'm hoping we can get back to that, despite this bump in the road." Another commenter shared, "My sister-in-law refers to my baby as hers all the time. She tells people who don't know us that she's her baby, and it makes me really uncomfortable and I don't like it. I can understand why she is bothered by this. However, this does seem like a completely different situation, and once you were asked to stop, you apologized and respected her wishes. I'm going to say, not the jerk. I'm genuinely so sorry your sister-in-law has done this. I was a sociology major in my undergrad, so I literally studied the impact of social situations such as this one, and I think I have done my very best to support and uplift my sister-in-law's role as a mother to my nibblings. I understood immediately when she told me to back off, which is why I did, and it honestly kind of broke my heart to think I might have made her doubt herself. I want so badly for her to speak with me so that she can understand I never had this intent to possibly make her feel the way your sister-in-law makes you feel. I'm thinking of you and hoping that your sister-in-law backs off because this is insane behavior. I really do appreciate your feedback with your history in situations similar to mine." Now for an update. My sister-in-law and I have made up. I decided to send her a heartfelt text explaining that I was still sorry and sort of upset over us being at odds over something I said. We ended up texting back and forth and then FaceTiming. So my sister-in-law told me that she's realized over the past 2 years how much of my niece's infancy she missed out on. She's been able to be a lot more present with my little nephew than she could be with my niece. And she admitted she felt jealous that I got to basically be a third parent to my niece. I watched my niece basically from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week for a long time when she was just a baby. And my sister-in-law had been feeling guilty that she had to work so much and that I had been the one looking after my niece so much. I told her vehemently that I did not want to overstep or to be seen as anything other than an aunt because she's a great mom. and I respect her much more than that. She told me she knew that, but that the day of the party had just been so long, and with her guilt, she just snapped at me. I also did apologize again for calling my niece my baby, and my sister-in-law said she didn't want to hear it because it was out of the blue and I had no idea how she was feeling. I waved her off and told her I still felt sorry and said I would be refraining from that nickname in the future because I have plenty other ways to dote on my niece. We were both teary and sappy, and we made plans to have a girls' day, just me and her, when I visit around the holidays. Thank you, everyone, who gave me advice and perspective. Am I the idiot for exposing my husband's affair and letting my family tear into his mistress? I have been so emotional for several weeks. I can't trust my own judgment. Starting around Christmas, I noticed a change in my husband, Justin. He's usually an affectionate and intimacy person, but our intimacy life went downhill. The summer was when our son Randell moved out to university. With Justin and I alone in the house, we were having intimacy almost every day before the dip. Other suspicious things started happening. He's going out without me more, woman's perfume on his clothes, being more secretive with his devices, etc. Early September, I managed to get in his laptop while he was asleep. I was expecting to find evidence of an affair, and I had a picture in my head of what the woman would look like. I found a mountain of evidence. There were unclothed selfies of her, videos of her self-intimacy, message exchanges, etc. She didn't look like what I was expecting. She looked at least 50 and at least 200 pounds. My husband is very fit, and so am I. He is Hollywood handsome, so I was expecting like some thin 27-year-old woman. I sent as much evidence to my email and socials as I could. I showed my sister Betty the evidence. I was so emotional that I was insensitive with my words, especially since my sister has a weight problem. I called my husband's mistress a fat old SLT. Betty said I shouldn't be talking about another woman like that. I was so enraged, and I asked Betty how could she defend the woman who's effing my husband. Betty said it's no excuse to body shame. I just started crying, and Betty hugged me. Obviously, my judgment is compromised, and I have a bias against my husband's mistress. I hate her so much. But did I go too far with my words? Am I the jerk? Now for the update. Thank you to all who left constructive comments. Even if you called me an AH, I appreciate your comment as long as it was constructive. The person who has been my emotional support during this was Justin's sister, Kelly. Before last evening, I have been slowly moving out my stuff into Kelly's home. Last evening, Kelly did me the favor of telling Justin's parents, Bob and Ann. Last evening, I took the last of my stuff and I went to stay at Kelly's until I can find a place. I made sure to video chat my son Randell first. I can't even remember everything I said, so I will give the main points. I told him that he is the most important thing to his father and me, that we love him, but we are getting divorced. I told him his father was cheating on me, and I told him how to find the mistress Vicky on social media. I told my son he doesn't have to hate her and that he doesn't have to defend me against his father. I told him I was at Kelly's house and he said he'll visit this weekend. I told him I love you and he said I love you too. I video chatted my husband Justin. The first thing I said was, our son, your parents, your sister, and I all know you're cheating. I got some sick satisfaction from the look on his face. I used his mistress's real full name, and I said she looks like me. Justin tried to speak, but I cut him off to say that our son nor his parents hate him. Justin was apologizing, and I said, I don't care. I said to just make this divorce as smooth as possible. I don't care to fight for anything. I asked him to do me a favor and preserve our son's old room as is. He agreed to do so. I ended the video chat. He tried to call again, but I ignored it. This morning is when I video chatted my sister Betty, but before the video chat, I sent Betty some of the messages Justin had sent to Vicky, where Justin body shamed me. In the video chat, I apologized for body shaming Vicky and I said I wouldn't do it again. Betty apologized to me that she had brought that up during the moment. I told Betty that I was staying at Kelly's. I asked Betty if she believes her husband loves and finds her sexy. Betty said yes. I told her then she should start acting like it. She asked if she can come to Kelly's this weekend, and I told my sister that I have enough support. I told her she doesn't need to come and that she should enjoy her husband who loves her. I was really petty yesterday and this morning, but that is the pettiest I plan on allowing myself to be. I'm in a privileged position that I don't need to fight for money from my soon-to-be ex-husband. I hope he's made this easy, especially since our son knows everything. I'm okay considering everything. Now, for the next update. Yesterday, Sunday, I called my sister Betty and I told her she can come over to my sister-in-law's house. Betty brought her husband Mike. I gave Betty a proper apology for body-shaming Vicky, the mistress. I told Betty that I was angry about her pushback about me body-shaming my husband's mistress, but that I also got angry at Betty for stupid stuff. I started viewing memories of Betty and my husband Justin in a different light. Like how when Betty uses our pool, Justin would suggest that Betty wears a two-piece. Or all the times Justin called Betty sexy. Or all the times he said that she didn't need to lose weight. I was also comparing my relationship with Justin and Betty's relationship with Mike. The majority of the time, I would have to initiate things with Justin. Also, he never did PDA. But Betty often mentions how Mike can't get enough of her. And I've seen how Mike is always all over her in public. I also noticed a pattern of when Justin was the most intimacy and physically affectionate towards me was when I was on my period and bloated. Betty apologized to me again. She also mentioned how awful Justin's messages to Vicky about my body are. I told Betty that I've been jealous of her body since I saw those messages. Betty said she's been jealous of my body since I lost the weight in my early 20s. I told my sister she should go to therapy if she feels that bad about her body. She said she will. I told her I would need therapy for everything that happened to me with my marriage. I also saw my son, Randell, father-in-law Bob, and mother-in-law Ann in person last weekend. I didn't talk about Vicky with my son. Bob, Ann, and I looked through Vicky's Instagram and Ann roasted her. In almost all of Vicky's Instagram pictures and videos, she's sweaty, messy, and wearing revealing clothes. A lot of her pictures and videos are of her at the club. In some videos, she makes references to pot. Ann called Vicky trashy and gross. She also said Vicky looks like she smells bad. I enjoyed hearing that a little too much. My mom, Jen, lives in another state, so I didn't get to see her in person. Betty and I video chatted my mom. My mom is literally a bigger woman than Vicky, but my mom did some fat shaming. Betty and I just let my mom say all of that stuff about Vicky. I know that my son, father-in-law, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law have all spoken to Justin via video chat. Justin got heat from all of them, and all of them refused to see him in person. Justin says he still wants to talk to me, but I still haven't said anything since that video chat. There is nothing he can say. I get it. He wanted the curvy bad girl. He's free to have fun with her.